Hello, everyone. This is Dave, the Prayer Guy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this, to be thinking about how to use prayer to fuel God's mission and to pray missionally. Praying for souls to be saved, praying for yourself to go out and share the gospel, and praying for others to share the gospel as well, that you know that are believers. And so this summer, I mentioned how my pastor challenged everybody in my church, United Baptist here in Old Town, Maine, to read a chapter a day from the New Testament. And when I got to, and I've been reading Acts because Acts is all about the early mission of the church. And it didn't take long for me to get to chapter 2 and notice verse 42. Now, before I get there, let me put it in context. So, the context is the disciples are together and they're praying in the upper room, probably the same room where they had the Last Supper with Jesus. And while they're praying, the Holy Spirit comes to them like tongues of fire. And from there, the disciples were able to speak in different languages. Well, it didn't take long for them to move outside and surrounded by all the people that were visiting Jerusalem at that time. And so they began to proclaim the gospel in the different languages of the people that were visiting. And that everyone heard and everyone understood what they were saying because they heard in their own native tongues. And then there were many new disciples that were made that day. I mean, that is just amazing in of itself because really this is at the end of the apostles or the disciples spending 10 days just praying. So the church in a lot of ways was birthed from a prayer movement. Many new disciples were made 10 days after the disciples spent in prayer. So let me go ahead and read Acts 2:42, and it says, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer." Now, of course, I'm going to focus on prayer, that last line, that last word, because how I'm the prayer guy. But I do want to briefly say that I think it's very important that we as believers devote ourselves to learning and understanding what our pastors are saying in sermons, because they spend the week, hopefully, with God developing the sermon so they are ready to share with us what God has on his heart for his people. And it's also vitally important that we as believers continue to meet together with other believers in fellowship, in Bible study, and of course, prayer. And so let's start with a question, a very honest question to ask ourselves. And that is, are we devoted to prayer? To prayer. And if we're going to pray missionally, well, we're going to have to be devoted to prayer. I mean, if we're not devoted to prayer, how can we say we're fueling God's mission with prayer? And we want to fuel God's mission with prayer because ultimately it is God who's working on his mission as he's working through us. And so we're going to need prayer in order to, remind God, hey, we want to be used. We want to be vessels in proclaiming your gospel. And we want to be praying for people to be saved. We want to be praying that we can share the gospel. And we want to be praying that God is raising up other disciples, other harvesters, as it says in Luke 4, and not Luke 4, John 4. Um, and so, really, to devote yourself with prayer really takes one thing, and that is a plan. You're going to need a plan. And your plan is probably going to look different than mine, and that's okay because we're different people. But basically the key is to have a plan. I'm going to right now share with you kind of my plan, kind of two things that I do. So one thing that I do is that I have an app on my phone. It's called the Echo Prayer app. And what it will do is it will remind me at certain times throughout the day prayers that I'm praying, prayers I want to make sure I'm praying for every day. And it's throughout the evening. And then when I get them, I spend about a minute to like 90 seconds praying for whatever it is. Also, during my morning quiet time, I have an index card that lists out prayer requests that I'm praying for every day during my morning quiet time. And for you, you could decide to do something totally different, and is that okay? Now, if you're watching this, you're like, hey, Dave, I have a prayer plan. Great, share it in the comments because somebody else watching this might read your comment and be like, that can work for me. So go ahead, share it in your comments. I would love to know what you're doing. And you know what? I might be inspired. I might decide to go ahead and join that plan as well. And then, of course, I do have a plan for prayer walking, which is actually going to be the topic of my next vlog. So, yeah, share it in the comments. And if you want help getting started, feel free to message me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page called Dave the Prayer Guy, so you can look that up, message me there. It would actually come straight to my phone, so I will know immediately if you are messaging me. So go ahead, message Dave the Prayer Guy if you want any suggestions and help with developing a plan so you can devote yourself to prayer. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and remember to pray to fuel God's mission. And may the Lord be with you.